In a dimly lit tavern on the outskirts of a bustling town, a man named Arre sat alone at a corner table, nursing a mug of ale that had long since gone warm. The heavy cloak draped around his shoulders, shadows concealing his features, as flickering candlelight played across the wooden walls, casting a dance of shapes that seemed alive. Arre's thoughts were consumed by anxiety. He felt an inviting warmth from the ale, but beneath it lay an unsettling chill, an awareness that someone was watching him. The tavern was alive with the raucous laughter of patrons and the clinking of tankards, but Arre felt isolated, the vortex of his own thoughts not allowing him to escape. Each time the door swung open, he glanced up, half expecting to see a familiar face from his past. The face of the man he had wronged very recently. A deal that had gone sour. Vendetta that had made itself known to him this very night. The weight of that grudge caught up with him much sooner than he expected, and it hung around his neck heavy enough to drown out the merriment that the rest of the patrons flooded the tavern with. As the evening wore on, whispers crept through the tavern, barely perceptible beneath the audible joy, and Arre couldn't shake the feeling that he was being hunted. Each click of the door, each shift of weight causing creaks at the bar, it was all a heartbeat too close. A hooded figure then entered, and then he felt it, a jolt of recognition. A spark of dread that ignited in his chest. The newcomer scanned the room with an intensity that brought the world into sharp focus. He was searching for something, or someone. Arre's heart raced, and he ducked his head, pulling the hood of his cloak lower. He could feel the hooded figure's gaze settle in his direction, anticipation crackling in the air. Forcing himself to maintain a semblance of calm, he signaled to the innkeeper for another drink, his voice masked and steady despite the uncertainty swirling inside of him. "Aye, just keep 'em coming, will ya?" he asked, attempting to sound nonchalant. The innkeeper, a burly man with a thick beard, nodded curtly, seemingly oblivious to the tension that enveloped Arre. Moments later, the figure approached the table, each step heavy and deliberate. "Arre," the figure said, a voice low and gravelly, revealing neither warmth nor malice, though the implications were enough to chill the bone. Arre froze, the ale in his hand slipping dangerously close to the edge of the table. The man's hood fell back, revealing a face worn by time and anger, eyes glinting like shards of glass. "I've come for what you owe me," the man continued, an indiscreet threat woven into the fabric of his words. Arre's mind raced, recalling the implications of their deal. Financial, moral, and the growing pile of regret that had come to define his night. "Now listen, I only need..." Arre started, but the man raised a hand to silence him. The gesture sharp and commanding. The tavern, oblivious to their encounter, continued in its revelry. Laughter began to bubble up again, turning into a vague symphony performed by the spirited drunkards. "No more games. You know what you cost me," the man replied, with sharp conviction in his voice. The accusation was blistering, dragging up the ghost of Arre's past sins. Should he beg forgiveness? Should he flee? The walls of the tavern began to close in around him, each laugh like a jab, each shout a reminder of how alone he truly was. "I truly sorry there, mate. All I have to pay you back with is this ale." Arre thought himself almost clever in his desperate reply, wearing a failing grin trying to mask the fear welling up in his throat. But the man chuckled, a low, foreboding sound that echoed in Arre's ears. With a swift motion, the man reached across the table, grasping Arre by the collar of his cloak, steel beneath the fabric. "Do you think I came here for humor? You think I care about ale?" The tension was palpable, a taut string ready to snap. At that moment, commotion erupted at the far end of the tavern, the burst of laughter and voices rising into urgency. A fight? What a stroke of luck! The brawling, shoving, and shouting broke the fragile quiet that had been tested between Arre and the man. Arre seized the opportunity, shoving aside the man's hand and bolting from his seat with a burst of adrenaline. He weaved through the throng of patrons, the sound of the fists flying and mugs crashing, mingling with the lively music that had yet to cease. The chaos of flickering lights and shouting rang in his ears as he rushed through the door and into the cold night air. The alleyway behind the tavern offered a momentary reprieve. He pressed his back against the rough stone wall, catching his breath, the chill night air biting at his cheeks. Yet that moment of solace was fleeting. Footsteps echoed in pursuit, and he knew he couldn't linger. Arre darted into the labyrinth of streets winding through the town, each dark alley a gamble for safety. His heart thundered in his chest, the memories of the man's face haunting each step he took. He stumbled into a narrow passage, hoping the shadows would conceal him. But his sins loomed large behind him. Suddenly, he felt a hand clasp on his shoulder, and he whipped around, prepared to fight. But it was a woman, silver hair and bright green eyes, which were wide with concern. "Are you okay?" she gasped, glancing around. "Please, move! He's coming!" He shouted, the adrenaline boiling over. Without waiting for her response, he pushed past her, taking off into the night. Every corner felt like a misstep toward his fate. Panic and adrenaline surged, but instinct for survival buoyed him, guiding his steps through a town that had become a shadowy maze. He could hear footsteps growing distant, though doubt clung to him like sweat, a constant reminder of the man's promise. And after running for what felt like hours, he finally came to a stop in a small square, the fountain in the center gurgling gently in the stillness of the night. It was here that Arre allowed himself to breathe, his mind still racing. He couldn't hide forever. He had to confront the man that chased him. As dawn's first light began to pour over the rooftops, painting the world in a soft pastel array of color, Arre stood resolute in the empty square. If he was to finally face the consequences, he would do so on his terms. He would seek out the man, not in fear, but in honesty, confronting the depths of his choices and the weight of his conscience. For the first time in what could have been ages, He let the warmth of hope creep back into his heart. It was time he reclaimed his life from his own devious nature that he had embraced. An inauspicious fog began to roll into the square, but he paid it no mind. The man who'd given chase then burst from around the corner, directly facing Arre. He stopped and stared dead into Arre's eyes. The man stopped for only a moment, and then began to run at Arre, picking up the pace as the fog crept closer, and the distance between the two men grew smaller. The fog became denser, then denser, until it started to claw at Arre's periphery. The image of the man became fainter, even with him closing distance. The fog continued to close its grip on Arre, until it overtook his sight and then squeezed the air from his lungs. Vision faded. Consciousness began to wane, until it left him completely. It could have been an instant. It could have been centuries. Arre had no way of knowing. He blinked rapidly, his mind raced, and his vision slowly recouped and refocused. Figure out where you are, and thank the gods for another chance. He had been in a town, hadn't he? Now, a clearing, in the middle of a green, dense forest, is where he stood. A disgusting scent filled the air, and unfamiliar forms appeared a short distance ahead. His thoughts narrowed and came into focus. And so he walked towards the people, only sure that they were strangers. But he hoped that they could help.
Hi everyone, my name is Bubba Love, and I wanted to thank you so much for listening to this story. I really hope you liked it. If you'd please leave me a like, comment, or if you would like to subscribe, that would mean the world to me. Or if you have an idea for a name that you'd like to hear me drop in a future story, let me know. I'd love to hear from you. You can find me at the Bubba Love on YouTube. Thank you.